Okay, the last thing I'd like us to think about as we're designing our first basic 3D world is audio. A kind of ambient audio soundtrack, whether that's realistic or maybe musical, because audio brings a lot in terms of mood and reality, and it just adds another sense to our immersion. So we're going to grab some audio. We'll start by organizing our project. We will right click and create a new folder, call it audio, and then I'll double click to go inside that empty folder. There are a lot of sources on the internet for free audio. You could use something like freesound.org where you can create a free account and download free sound, sound effects, but also ambiances. At school, we have Soundly accounts that we pay for on your behalf that you can search through tags and download high quality, sound and music and things of that nature. Also, YouTube has an audio library where you can download sound and music. In this case, I'm going to grab something from YouTube and something from freesound.org. So I've started with a spring day forest sound. It's just kind of like a realistic ambience with some birds chirping. And I'm going to throw that file into my Unity project. I have also grabbed a piece of music from freesound.org. Okay, so in terms of making audio work in Unity, there is a component that has to exist on some object, probably the camera, that's called an audio listener. And luckily, our first-person controller that we downloaded from Unity already has this set up. So the main camera has an audio listener attached to it, and the audio listener just functions as this is the game object that hears audio. So we play audio spatially in reference to this object. So if the audio has like a source that's like, oh, it's coming from over here in the mountains, and as you get closer to it, we want it to sound like you got closer to it. That's what the audio listener is capable of. But in this case, we're just making the audio sort of play everywhere because it's like background sound that like soundtrack music that we should hear no matter where we walk. So we'll start with our ambience, and it's as simple as dragging the audio file right up into the hierarchy. The only change I'm going to make is it gets its game object name from the file name, and I just want to make sure I'm aware that this is audio. So I'm going to put like audio in front of it, and this is just for my own organization. So the audio track now has one component. It's called audio source, and that audio source is the audio clip Spring Day Forest. So it's playing this clip. It has a couple of settings we need to make sure we're aware of. Play on awake is checked by default. That means as soon as the game starts, this sound starts playing. That seems right for ambience. One thing it's missing though is we ought to click loop, because ambience should loop as well. Now, I did not check if Google's Spring Day ambient audio loops nicely or not. But should you need to make an audio file loop, you would want to put it on a timeline, make a nice crossfade between the end and beginning, and then you could kind of cut in the same place in the middle, and now you've made a perfect loop. So if you need help making a perfect loop in audio, you can ask me in class and I'll explain better than what I just said. But if you take a look just further down, there is a volume slider, and this is pretty important because we might not want to hear the birds chirping as loud as all that. So I'm going to bring this down just a bit, and then I'm going to take a listen and just see how it works. Okay, it's there. It's subtle. It's doing what ambient should. I could maybe pump it a little bit. I do think that it's not enough in my case, because this really isn't a forest, and I'm not really trying to be realistic here. I want this to be more mystical, more magical. So I'm going to add kind of mood music, and I've picked something that's a little bit sci-fi and magic-y. And same process, I'm just going to drag it up here. Once again, it takes its name from its file name, which in this case from freesound.org is very non-descriptive. So I'm going to ditch a lot of this blah, 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 and just leave Dreamy Choir, and I will call it Music Dreamy Choir. And then I will loop it. And in this case, the volume needs to come down a lot because this is music, but I want it to be subtle in the background ambient music, and I don't want it to be so loud that we don't still hear a little bit of that forest bird chirp stuff. So I'm going to rough it in there just as a guess, and then I'll hit play and find out. All right, pretty cool. I think that's a decent mix for now. I could see maybe bringing the music down a little bit and the birds back up a little bit, but it gets me more or less in the ballpark of what I'm after. So this is how you would do a simple ambient sort of everywhere environmental soundscape. You can have more than one sound playing at once. You can mix them in relationship to one another. And I think this, along with lighting, are both super important. You don't want to ignore these because they do so much to create mood and genre and just more immersion and believability in your world. So enjoy working with some lighting and sound to help create the vibe you want to create in your virtual world.